It was a warm spring afternoon when everything was about to change for Deku and the other students in Class 1A. And this is because a brand new program was about to be starting where they would be teaming up with pro heroes to go on missions of various students from around the country and solve crimes. Now this was something that was very much needed in the original My Hero Academia manga, just a chance to see our students out and about and actually doing operations that aren't entirely life or death, right? It's not like they're fighting against Shigaraki and major villains like that, but we do still get to see some character development from our characters and also learn more about some of the pro heroes. And in this mission specifically, Deku is actually paired with Mirko, the number 5 hero. Thanks to a brand new special program happening at UA that's pretty much meant to set up teamwork between all sorts of heroes before they're actually full-fledged heroes in the future and have to meet each other on the battlefield. And as Deku opens a letter for his first mission, he realizes that he's going to be paired up with Bakugo and Ochako. So they all make their way to the hero agency that they're supposed to meet at, but they find out that it's just a regular hotel. This isn't a hero agency at all. And it doesn't really seem like they know which hero they're going to be working with, because Deku in fact is surprised when he sees Mirko for the first time. Now when Mirko arrives on the scene, she explains to Deku and everyone else that this isn't really her hero agency, and Deku remembers a little bit of trivia about Mirko because he's a fan of all the heroes, saying that Mirko is actually a new breed of hero who goes around Japan without a set jurisdiction, pretty much meaning that she doesn't have only one area that she operates in and doesn't actually have her own set in place agency, which also means that Mirko doesn't have any sidekicks. And this is something that we do kind of have hinted about Mirko in the Vigilantes manga, when Mirko does make her appearance in the flashback arc, and she's more or less a person that just likes fighting alone and handling things in a solo sense. Now despite the fact that Deku and everyone else are pretty much assigned to Mirko's team, Mirko tells them that she really has no interest in having them tag along, and she's just gonna do all the work because that's her version of freedom. She wants to be free to dive into crowds and kick bad guys and do all that stuff on her own, so she really doesn't feel like she needs Deku and the others, but they are free to tag along and at least watch her in her journey. We cut over to Mirko on the scene actually attacking a group of villains, and one of the villains seems to have some sort of tortoise quirk, which is funny because, you know, the whole tortoise in the hair situation, and Mirko does end up kicking him right in his face, sort of building a big crowd around her, as Deku and the other 1A students are amazed because, again, Mirko is pretty awesome. And as the large crowd is here, we see a boy with a gang orca balloon that actually slips out of his hands and floats into the air, so Ochako jumps up using her quirk and grabs it and gives it back to the little boy, who says thanks lady, looking at Ochako as like an older person, and I'm sure she's kind of like, I don't really get called lady very often, but Ochako does smile and thank the little boy for this compliment. Deku notes how good Ochako is with civilians and says that he has to step it up too, but on the other side, Bakugo is like grinning and like boiling. You see like a red aura forming around Bakugo as he's like, come on out here, villains, get on out here, what are you so afraid of? And as Bakugo tries to calm Deku down, we actually see a man in a hooded outfit with a mask on his face bump into Deku and walk into a nearby alley, as Deku is saying, oh, I'm sorry for being in your way, and the guy questions Deku on whether or not he's actually a hero. Deku says, yeah, well, I guess my costume kind of gave it away, but I'm just a student hero here as part of my studies. You can use your quirk whenever you want, pretty much, right? I'm not gonna lie, man, that makes me really jealous. And Deku, getting a little bit of a peek at this guy's face, wonders if he's actually doing okay and tells the man, you don't really look all that great. Do you need any help right now? And the guy then zips up his raincoat, trying to cover his face a little more, and begins to walk away. Bakugo kind of keeps his eye on the guy as he walks away, maybe noticing about him that Deku didn't, but the scene moves forward to later on in the day when Mirko is kind of giving them all pointers on how they did in this situation. First off, Mirko tells Bakugo that bloodlust that he has towards villains, she actually really loves it, getting a funny reaction out of Ochako and Deku, who are both like, you approve of this? You want him to be this way? And in response, Mirko also praises Ochako for the way that she handled the young boy and his balloon, but she has nothing good to say about Deku, saying that Deku actually couldn't really do anything the entire time that they were out. And this is where elsewhere we pick up on that strange man covered in the raincoat and a mask, who's walking into an alleyway sort of stumbling with his hand against the wall, saying, my quirk, I gotta release it. I can't hold back, with a really strange look on his face. At this moment, we see a bunch of black fog starting to release from his body, and a little more time goes on before we cut to a couple walking through a city street, noticing that there is actually a lot of fog in the area. One of the civilians walking by actually walks into some of this weird black fog and immediately drops down onto the ground like he fainted. And this fog starts to spread and spread until it actually takes over a large section of the city, with news reports coming in that a massive fog has appeared in Sarukamai ward, and all citizens are advised to take shelter. And on the news they even have an image of the suspect, confirming for Deku and the other heroes that this is the man that they saw earlier, whose name is apparently Takeshi Busujima. And the news is alleging that this quirk that is going on a rampage is actually his poison gas quirk. Mirko and everyone head to the scene equipped with gas masks to avoid the fog, and Mirko says the only thing that we can do here is kick the villain as soon as they pop up, so let's go take care of it. In the city, as the black fog starts to spread and nearly cover a group of civilians, Deku arrives and does a full-on Delaware smash, sending the mist flying away with his amazing air pressure. And at the same time, we see Ochako in the air doing some reconnaissance, flying through the city streets to try to find the man that they're after, and she does actually spot him, notifying Bakugo and Deku that he's heading for the edge of town. The suspect continues to run and run as Bakugo spots him at the corner of his eye and begins to fly forward. But Deku is wondering what exactly is the reason for all of this, right? Like, why is this guy doing this and why is he heading to the outskirts of the city? And this is when Bakugo remembers his eagle eye moment from earlier, saying that he noticed in that guy's eyes a layer of jealousy over them being able to use their quirks, and he's probably just rampaging because of that jealousy itself. And we get a little panel of Deku kind of reacting to Bakugo saying this because, of course, on some level Deku can definitely relate to being jealous over people having quirks. Bakugo and Deku chase this man to the end of an alleyway when he's blocked off by a large crowd, and then Ochako and Mirko also land in the alley, making sure this man has no escape. And it's here where again Deku starts really questioning what exactly is going on here, right? Like, if he wanted to do damage to the civilians in the city, he would have just kept running into the crowd and releasing his quirk, but he's not really acting like a villain. However, despite that, they still have no idea why he keeps releasing his quirk. Mirko tells everyone to stop hesitating and dive in, actually screaming out loud that there's no way that this villain can run away from their 4-hero team, showing that Mirko now sees at least these 3 UA students as part of her team in earnest, which is a nice little bit of development for Mirko, especially since this is happening before My Hero Academia's war arc, before we really saw her taking a role in a team operation. And given that teamwork is kind of the whole point of this side manga, I just thought that was really awesome to see. Now, while everyone is diving in, Deku runs in between Bakugo and the villain, actually protecting him in front of Bakugo's face, and Bakugo starts questioning Deku like, hey, come on, you know that's a villain, right? Like, what are we doing here? Deku tells Bakugo everything he's been noticing so far, saying that this guy keeps avoiding crowded areas like he's more or less trying to avoid hurting people with that quirk. And Deku theorizes that what's actually going on is that the poison gas inside of his body keeps building up and he can't keep it in forever. And at this point, the villain actually starts breaking down, saying that's exactly the case, explaining that when he doesn't use his quirk, the poison continues to build up in his body and causing him extreme stress, so he had to let it out no matter what. And then if he didn't, his own quirk was gonna destroy him, so he was pretty much driven into a maddening corner where he had to let the quirk out despite the fact that he knew it would affect other people, but he didn't want to be known as a villain. And he even looks at Deku saying, look, my quirk was gonna kill me, so I had to use it. Does that make me a villain though? Does that make me a bad guy? And as Deku thinks really hard about what he could possibly do to help this guy, he comes up with nothing. In fact, it's actually Bakugo who comes up with a plan here. Bakugo says, oh, okay, if that's the only problem you have, let your quirk run wild right now. And everyone's kind of like, what do you mean by that? Obviously, he can't just do that because it's going to affect the civilians. But Deku says, everyone, listen to Kachan real quick because there's no way he just said that for no reason. And as Bakugo is trying to get the villain to understand his plan, the villain is saying, look, I've been building up this gas for way too many years for me to just release it. It's going to take out everyone in this town. I can't do that. That's why I was trying to run to the edge of town to release it there when there would be less people. So not really trusting Bakugo's idea, he's still kind of fighting back at the prospect of what they're planning to do, but Deku wonders, what can I do right now to get this guy to trust me, right? As a hero, that's kind of something that you have to know how to do. A big part of certain situations is being able to get someone to trust that you're actually able to handle that situation so they can give up to you and follow your actual plan. And after Deku takes his mask off, actually using the mask that comes with his outfit for one of the first times in the series, he really doesn't use it all that much. Last time we saw him use it was during like season 4, and it's really cool. Deku should definitely wear it more. I know we saw Vigilante Deku wearing it a bunch, but just seeing regular Deku wearing it is really awesome. Now with Takeshi sort of understanding that the heroes are on his side, Bakugo orders Ochako to float him up as high as she possibly can, and the guy goes floating high into the air as Bakugo also flies up, telling him to release every bit of poison gas that he has into the air above the city. And as the man finally gives in and releases all the poison smoke within his body, we see Deku saying, look, heroes don't just beat up villains. A big part of our job is helping people in trouble, and even if a villain is just a person in trouble, our job is to figure out if they actually want to hurt people and keep doing the evil things that they're doing, and if not, what can we do to actually put that to a stop without just beating them up. And as Deku was saying this, we see Bakugo put two of his hands together and release a pretty big explosion that actually ignites all of the poisonous fumes that came from Takashi's body. It's like a giant firework goes off in the streets above Tokyo, and as Bakugo and Takashi both float down, we see Takashi throwing his mask off and taking a deep breath as he says, "Thank you, heroes, that honestly feels a lot better." And as he says this, tears definitely stream down his face because this is a massive relief that he's been dealing with for years and years. However, despite all of this and despite Deku's team saving this guy, he actually does still get arrested by the police because his quirk did rampage, and that at the end of the day is still against the law. So that kind of shows how, like, despite the fact that the heroes have good intentions sometimes and they actually do know the proper way to do things, there still is some systemic issues in My Hero Academia at this point, where the best that they can hope for is maybe a petition to lighten this guy's sentence after the story hits the news. But keep in mind that Deku and the others told the entire story to the authorities and they still felt the need to arrest him, so that really shows the difference between police and heroes in MHA. And as Deku, Ochako, and Bakugo finally make it back to UA after the long day they had, all the different students in the class rant to All Might about their team-up mission experiences, whether they were good or bad, and All Might says, all right, enough of that, let me give you guys all your next mission so you can get out of my face. And it's at this moment where Deku gets the invite to his next mission, wondering what kind of team he's going to be on and what hero he's going to be paired up with next.